What's up, everybody? Thank you for coming over to the DFS 5-Pack, where we talk a lot of daily fantasy sports. Wanted to take a couple minutes today to do a lineup review. Usually we're reviewing cash lineups. Today, we're going to go through a GPP day that Matt had and why he's a happy young man today.
Yeah, definitely a nice night last night, but need some of those when you play these expensive contests. I'll tell you that much.
Right, and I think that's a big point to get across to people. So when you see that he's winning close to 17,000 last night, your entry fees were, over $1,000. This wasn't off of a $3 bet or anything like that.
This is very true.
So it's important to note those things. I know a lot of times when people go around like different forms of social media and they see people posting big winnings, remember a lot of times when you see somebody winning $100,000 or something like that, they ain't playing for $9. All right. Most of the time they are playing for $2, $3, $4 a night, and they don't tell you when they lose all that money.
Yeah. So we talk about that often. We try to be very transparent about it. You asked me before, thinking this contest was the 180, which is normally what I enter. That contest isn't available every night. So like I was telling you, I had a real good night Saturday night, finished real high up in a couple GPPs with a couple lineups. So, Sunday with cash game working out like they did and had a little extra money, ended up liking the slate last night, went in for a little bit extra. Obviously I'm happy at how it worked out, but I've definitely had times where I've done this and it hasn't worked out as well as I've wanted it to.
Yeah, and that's important to note. And I've gone around enough on social media over the last 5 years posting DFS things. Like I'll catch people times, like they'll be posting like their big winnings, but they'll screenshot it wrong. They're like, look, took down 15K on Draftkings last night, but then you see like their entry fees were 17K. Like, no, you lost $2,000. It's important to note, like, you put money into this one, probably close to 1,100 or 1,200 or whatever it was, but come out with 17. It's still a really, really nice night. But what's the old saying? It takes money to make money.
Yeah, like imagine like if you have a week or 2 weeks where you don't see green and you're playing contests like this every night, it costs a lot of money.
All right, so let's start with a couple of points. And one thing I want to talk about here is you can see that you're 4 deep on the Miami-LA game. And on a big slate like this, where you got 11 games like this, a lot of times if you have players you like, it makes sense to often put them in the same game together because you can see Miami was 108-105 last night. And you want games that are close and competitive for 4 quarters that have a nice pace to them, perhaps some turnovers. Now you need to pick the right pieces from this game, but you were on Dwayne Wade from the drop yesterday. You were a big fan of his. He was on the public video. And this was one where you read more into something that wasn't statistical related.
Yeah, I like the narrative here. The last game against LeBron, a lot was made of that. His last game in LA, just a lot of things set up real nice for this spot. I'm not going to lie. I got a little bit scared off of Wade as the day went on. Tyler Johnson played, Richardson played, Dragic played. So I didn't use him in my other 2 lineups. I was planning on using him in all 3 or in at least 2 of 3. I ended up only using him in 1. And I was contemplating taking him out of this one. I messed with this lineup a couple times, thinking about changing it. Ended up not changing it because I knew that if something like this happened and I changed it, I would kick myself. And we always talk about that. A lot of times you got to just go with how you originally feel.
All right. Lonzo Ball, as far as he goes, I mean, there was no rocket science here. He's only 14% owned yesterday because there were so many good plays out there. But Lonzo made sense the entire day. I think we both agreed that if he didn't make any lineups that we had, it was only because there was 8,000 good plays. You can't play everybody.
Yeah, my thing for me, and I don't exactly know how it worked out, was I just preferred Lonzo to a much more popular Terry Rozier.
And they scored very, very similar. But you liked him in this spot. We liked him all day long. And again, I can't go back to this. You say it all the time. You can't roster everybody. There was a lot of guys to like yesterday, and Lonzo was one of them. On a different slate, Lonzo might have been 50, 60% because he made a lot of sense, but he was only 14 because there was a plethora of good plays.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sticking with the same game, though, you were very bullish on Kuzma. He's been playing excellent, especially the last couple games with no Brandon Ingram. We like Kyle Kuzma over here. Very low ownership, played a very good game.
Played a very good game, and that's the other thing. I'm glad we're talking about this game first because you notice in these 4 guys, none of them are LeBron James. So a lot of ways to skin the cat. LeBron played well last night, but clearly he wasn't, needed depending on how you wanted to construct your roster.
No, the way it broke down last night, LeBron James was neither needed to be faded or played. He was good, not great.
Exactly.
So, and then Bam, another one. He made a lot of sense. Big men tend to excel against LA. We know this guy can put up a lot of points with Hassan Whiteside is out, much like Lonzo Ball at a very similar ownership percentage between 10 to 15%. Bam would have been chalkier on a different slate. There was so many ways to go. Feasy at such a high percentage of the ownership over at the center position. Randall took a lot of it at the power forward position. The only reason he's only 11% is because there was 50 to 100 guys yesterday that were in play.
Exactly.
So, okay, after that, you pivoted to Drummond throughout the day once the Blake Griffin news came out, correct?
Yeah, I ended up really liking Drummond. We talked that over a little bit. It just set up as a spot where we talked about it a little bit, and it had been in my head when we talked about it last week that one of these days Drummond was going to play well, because as much as, we talk about how he doesn't have, he's not as mentally strong as Joel Embiid, he's still really freaking good. And, he manned up last night. No Blake Griffin made it so he had to do everything. And they give him a lot of run, even when games get like out of hand. He was still out there like with the scrubs at the end. I didn't really get it, but I took it.
Yeah, you weren't arguing that fact. And again, the other point, Philly's the better team right here at home. My biggest concern with Drummond was the game might get out of hand. And they lost Jimmy Butler pretty early in that game, which definitely weakened who the 76ers is. Now, we don't know that changed anything, but those are the little things that go into an NBA slate, good, bad. For all we know, maybe it hurt Andre Drummond. We don't really have any way to predict how that game went out, but little things changed throughout the game. And even if it was a difference of 4 points, well, let's make that difference. Even if that helped him get an extra 8 points, that 8 points could be the difference between winning 15 grand on this lineup and like 3 grand.
Yeah, I mean, that 8 point, exactly. Great point.
Right? I mean, at any given slate, you're going to get unlucky or lucky. I brought it up when we did the public video earlier today. Like, you had a great night. I, on the other hand, lost NFL primetime and NFL or NBA cash lineups by a combined 1.5 point. Little things can happen in any given day that could be good or lucky. That stuff weighs out long term. There's a million other nights where you could have won 15K instead of only winning 500 if X, Y, and Z had happened. So on any given night, there's so much luck that goes into it.
Always, and some of it you don't even know about because you can't follow every single game.
Right? Like you talked about this last night with Feast, and Feast was ultra chalk, and we talked about fading him in GPPs because of what we thought was a really high likelihood, which was he would get into quick foul trouble. But we also both agreed the second foul on him was bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really glad you brought that up because that's like pretty much the exact point I'm making. So much stuff happens in all these games. Like that was lucky. Most people probably didn't even see that or don't even think about that. But imagine if, Thies doesn't get that foul call and doesn't get pulled there and gets 15 quick DK points.
Right? If that doesn't happen, you might legitimately go from winning 15K to winning 400.
Right. I mean, no doubt.
So there's a lot that goes into an NBA slate, but I can't say it enough. Success within DFS is no different than in life in the aspect that like you got to take the good with the bad, but also there's a lot of luck that goes into any small sample size like this. And you go back to Saturday night, you had a really good lineup where you won 5K. Like Bam cleaned up late, and that cost you what, $5,000, $10,000?
Yeah, $10,000.
Right. So it's the two sides of Bam right here. He cost you 10 grand, and then won you probably another 10 grand last night. So there's a lot that goes into anything. And when people ask, well, what are your crush picks tonight? Like, well, you're not hiding it. And when somebody likes me, who do you like better? Like Middleton and I forget Tatum last night. You know what I mean? Like I liked him about the same. Tatum ended up probably being a little bit better, but it could have worked out a million different ways.
Yeah. So guy I want to talk about here, which kind of falls into exactly what you're talking about. My other two lineups that I made last night were solid. They both cashed and they were both in the top 100 easily. The problem was with both of them, Langston Galloway had 2 points, and he was in both those lineups. Now, one of them I used Miles Turner with Drummond, so that lineup was still awesome. And the other one I used that Robert Williams with a little bit of a game stat from that game, so that was solid. But in this lineup, I had Galloway in here also. I was, I had 300 left on the table, and I was debating because I didn't want to just use someone else because I had the money. We talk about that all the time. But on the other hand, by playing Galloway here, it was almost like I was 5-packing him, having him in every single lineup. So I waited out, and I was like, you know what? I can't do that because Galloway has 0 point floor. That happened last night, and that pivot itself clearly, I mean, was the difference of the night for me.
And so it was money available was going from Galloway to Monte Morris.
Mm-hmm.
So that one decision, you said Galloway ended up with 2 points?
2 points.
So if you subtract 36 from 321, this puts you down in the 285 range, which...
I mean, my other lineup was like 67th.
Yeah, would be right around the same thing, which is a difference of $14,000. And it's amazing how one little decision like that can be such a difference maker. Now, that goes to what we just talked about, like with long-term versus short-term.
We're talking about Langston Galloway and Monte Morris. Like, that's why, as much as we talk about, you know, how NBA is different from baseball and, you know, nothing is as random as baseball, and that's so true, it still oftentimes comes down to stuff that we have no idea what's going to happen.
Right. And we like Monte Morris, but do you really think that if you play this game out over and over again, he's going for 38.5 versus Memphis over and over again?
He had like 12 at half, and I was like, really solid. If he has another half like that, you know, this lineup will see green. When I looked at my phone and saw he had 38, I did a double take. Like, I literally thought it was wrong.
Yeah, it was a great game by him. We like the kid. The kid can play. And he had a really, really nice game last night. So Monte Morris over Trey Lyles, who was, you know, similar dollar amount. Lyles got pulled from the starting lineup, kind of like after all my other guys were locked. So even though that took away from what I thought they would intended him to do, he still made a lot of sense. But it can be the same game. And we're talking about a guy with both guys are going to play minutes. But Lyles was 70% owned and Morris is 5.
Yeah, and like, it's tough to admit this year, but like, I liked Galloway more than I liked Monte Morris yesterday. I mean, I know it was to you, and I was being a little facetious and kidding because it's me to you, but you remember the messages I was sending you about Galloway last night?
Refresh me. I do remember you saying, I just can't remember what you said.
I was like pleading with you to tell me he could do anything in the second half.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's possible. I mean, he's a free shooter, so you make a couple and then you just start, you know, jacking him up there. I used him in one too. He was terrible.
Yeah, you always talk about that. When guys are like that cheap, like, we know who Langston Galloway is. It was really, you know, I got way too caught up in how many shots he'd taken the past 2 days. You know, that was a definite mistake because, you know, these guys are 3-3 for a reason.
Right. Other important thing of note that I think you may have mentioned in the beginning, I don't remember, was you didn't freak out when like the Giannis news came out and like have to play Middleton and Bledsoe, because you even asked me, are Middleton and Bledsoe now 100% must plays? I'm like, I mean, no, I like them. They make sense, but I'm not switching to them. One, just because I can't, because half my guys are locked at this point. That news came out a few minutes before the Boston game started, and I was playing Mario Kart with my son, so I didn't even have an opportunity to jump off and take a look at that stuff. But it wasn't necessary. Like, if you like your lineup, don't have to freak out when new news comes up.
No, and who knows? That might have been something that really helped me too, because other people might have played Kuzma and switched him to Middleton or whatever it was. You never know, like, what helps you in a night. You really don't.
Right? Exactly. There's so many little things, especially in a big slate like this, where there was so many good plays last night. And that's one of those nights where we get 100 questions. Like, how are you fading this guy? Like, it's not a question of fading. There's 65 good plays last night, if not more. You can't play all of them. You have 8 roster spots.
Yeah, and like, you know, I fell asleep, like, not before the Lakers Heat game started, but like probably around halftime. I had no idea what happened in the second half. I'm sure I got lucky in a ton of ways. And honestly, that's what – I don't want to say helps me, but what kind of keeps me balanced and even keeled is I appreciate that, and I recognize that, you know, no matter how much work and how, you know, quote unquote good we can be at this, like, it takes luck.
Right. I mean, you messaged me your lineup on Saturday night when you were in first place, and it was said 50,000, which ultimately went all the way down to 5K. But if Bam and Lillard don't have really good games, I mean, you know, you're sitting there with 50,000. That's the night where it hurt you. Tonight it helped you. And who knows what's going to happen tonight. It's just difficult for sometimes people early to DFS to accept the fact that there is so much freaking luck on any given night, and that you just have to weigh it through a long-term type of evaluation.
And yeah, and also I'm glad we talked about, you know, how much the entry contest is and all that stuff, because, you know, most providers, et cetera, don't talk about that stuff. I'd definitely be really careful on entering those type of contests. simply because, first off, regardless of your bankroll, they're not like single entry or 3 entry max. So, you've got a lot of sharks in those fields. I play those slates sometimes when I really like the slate and I feel, I've got the experience to do so. But I don't think that these types of contests should be taken lightly because they can cost a lot of money, clearly.
Absolutely. And again, like you brought up, not everybody has the bankroll to do that. I couldn't enter these contests on a nightly basis. That would go through my bankroll really, really, really fast. So you do have to be careful for what you're doing. And just because you want to win 15,000, I mean, if you got $3,000 to your name, don't go spending it all in DFS in one night. That's just irresponsible.
Agreed. I mean, I've had a few good wins. I've built my bankroll. You know how it is.
Right. You're a degenerate too. Like you got bets going every night, sports betting and stuff like that. But you take the ups and the downs that go along with it. It's, more fun to talk about the ups, but, prior to a couple days ago, you're like, I really need a big win because it's been a really crappy 2 weeks where, when you drop 300, 400, 500 in a night, that can go away really quick.
Yeah. The problem is like when you're not seeing, and I was telling you this first thing this morning about how I was thinking about this, we talk about how playing lighter at the beginning of the year. And I really wish I had, done that more because now I'm starting to really find my groove, starting to feel really comfortable on a slate by slate basis. And I'm thinking about a lot of the money that I, wasted at the beginning of the year that could have been better spent.
It's true. I always play the beginning part of the NBA season light because I feel like our edge comes from watching and knowing what the rotation is. I feel like you're guessing a lot the first couple of weeks. Now, there's a lot of you guys out there who are big into it that probably feel like you get your edge because you know what people are going to do the first couple of weeks more than somebody else. To each his own. There's a million different ways to play this game and be successful. We evaluate on different ways and things like that. I'm playing for probably 5 or 6 or 7 times as much per night now than I was the first 2 weeks of the year.
Yeah. Clearly last night I was playing for more. Tonight, I'll probably be playing for less because I don't like this slate at all. And now I'm feeling more comfortable. It's at the beginning of the year, I feel like I would press more, especially when I wasn't going that well. Obviously the past few days have been different, but even when I didn't like a slate, I'd start, thinking my eyes would get big as the day would continue, the closer the slate got. That can definitely be a problem. I know not just for me.
No, definitely. That's the gambler in all of us. You don't play DFS without being a little bit of a gambler. And it's just more fun to have that opportunity to win something. I mean, even if you go play blackjack, what's more fun, $5 a hand or $50 a hand? Obviously, it's more thrilling to play for $50 a hand.
No doubt.
So, all right, guys, just to reiterate, we should have brought it up in the beginning. To celebrate Matt's win from last night, we are offering some rebates on new customers today. Monthly customers will send you a $5 rebate after sign up. Lifetime will send you $35 back, and annual would be $20 back. So if you've been thinking about getting a membership, it's a great day to do it. I actually got some rebates to go send back right now, so it's time to get done with this. But congratulations again, Matt, and thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks, man. Thanks, guys.